People with low self-esteem typically spend their entire life wondering and worrying if they are good enough. And that actually becomes a very, very expensive problem. Expensive how? Well, first of all, this person is very, very easily manipulated, very easily influenced, very easily controlled. In addition, think about how much energy this person wastes on constantly evaluating the situation, whether they fit in, whether they belong, whether that person likes them, whether that person approves of them, whether they are qualified. Now, on top of all of that, typically, like I said, these people are constantly taken advantage of, thinking, believing that they're being nice, that they're being flexible, that they should just go along with the program, when often on the other side of that, they get dropped or disappointed or really just taken advantage of, and then often end up alone and lonely, feeling defeated, feeling depleted. The resentment starts to build, the shame starts to build. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, so often, unfortunately, this person believes somehow that, oh, when I get to that income, then I will feel good enough. When I reach that weight goal or that beauty standard, then I will feel good enough. When I have that perfect relationship, when that perfect person approves of me, then I will feel good enough. And this is like delusional, because that person very often sets a standard that actually has nothing to do with their core values or with their real needs or wants or their real standards, and rather this becomes a pursuit to nowhere land. This becomes a pursuit to delusional, because even if they were to get that income goal or that relationship goal or that health goal, whether that's weight or beauty or whatever, well, guess what? If this person doesn't feel good enough today, no money, no relationship, nothing outside of this person's life will fix this problem. And this is what keeps somebody stuck, and often is the cause for deeply rooted anxiety and depression, insecurities, self-doubt, and that ultimately leads to more fear. Fear of I'm not good enough. There's no certification, there's no PhD, there is no, status won't fix this. Like I said, income won't fix this. Education won't fix this. Regardless how many ranks you climb, titles won't fix this. Because that is literally just a mask. All those things are masks disguised as, oh, when you reach this status, then, and by the way, that day never comes, because if that person isn't willing and able to do the work inside to restore their self-worth, to restore truly, genuinely, completely, sincerely, restore their self-worth, this person will literally, their entire life, this is so expensive, because it impacts a person's health, it impacts their energy, it impacts their decision making, it impacts obviously every single relationship, because again, that person either remains a relentless people pleaser, a perfectionist, somebody who tries to bend over backwards just to be liked, just to gain a little bit of, like a drop of approval, never realizing all those things are actually fake. Because until you can become and give yourself permission to become unapologetically you, regardless whether people like you or approve of you, then this is what keeps somebody stuck in despair, in loneliness. Again, the anxiety and the depression are just gonna keep dancing around. Now, one of the most important things that I can tell you about this, please understand, this has nothing to do with self-confidence or a personality trait or some sort of character flaw or strength. You know where this comes from? This comes from, and this is what so many people don't know, that actually so many people have childhood programming controlling their adult life. But because they don't know that, they think that it's bad luck, or it's fate, or it's their genetics, or this is just how I am. I guess I'm just inferior. I guess other people are just better than me. And that is not true. There is no, like in the human system, there is no such thing as rank, as one human being being better than another. That doesn't exist. That comes from the ego. But the childhood programming means from an early age. So let's just go way back, okay, to the beginning of you. When you were born, just FYI, you were born relentless. You were born spirited. You were born curious. You were born salivating after life. But you were taught to relent. Because you had to participate in the culture and the society and all those imposed limitations and expectations. And so eventually a human being surrenders to that. Next, you were born with unshakable, unbreakable, unstoppable self-confidence. But that self-confidence, that was shamed out of you from an early age. And that's when you learned. You're not good enough, you don't qualify, you don't measure up, you are too emotional, you are too much, you're not good enough, you're in other words, and even school. I mean, think about the toxic environment of school where people are rated and graded. What do you think that might do to a human, even the most resilient human being? What do you think that might do? I mean, we don't need to have a PhD to understand what something like that will do to human psychology. And I didn't even get into toxic family structures, dysfunctional systems. I didn't even get into trauma or abuse yet. Like that, I didn't even touch that yet, which obviously that's another massive contributor. But nobody tells you that. And so then eventually, right, and you literally are a walking, talking, breathing miracle. Every human being is. But you were programmed. And for a lot of people, the program that runs in the back of their mind is the program that tries to tease you and taunt you and try to convince you that you're not enough. And your childhood mind has plenty of evidence. You weren't picked for the team, you were being teased, you were being bullied, they made fun of your clothes, they made fun of your nose. For me, it was very, just cute. I stuttered for the first 20 years of my life. Yep, very severe speech impediment. So do the math there. I don't think we need to elaborate on what something like that will, where everybody else was normal and healthy. And of course, I stood out like a sore thumb, and there was not a day in my youth that I was not being humiliated, embarrassed, where I felt ashamed, where I felt like SHIT, like I was being punished by life, don't even, it wasn't funny then. It's funny now because it's just so hilarious but every human being has some sort of a story like that. You see, and those stories, they will stick to you. Those criticisms and judgments and the shame and the blame, that will stay with you. And then, of course, by the time you become an adult, you don't even know who you are anymore. because of all the different ways people try to, and they call this teaching, right? Or they call it parenting or educating, which of course that's not what it is, but okay. When from an early age, you were supposed to fit into a box and you were supposed to be the box. We can call that a human robot, which by the way, today you can buy those things. You don't need to try to fit your kid into some sort of, anyhow, it's just so inappropriate, but it's so true. So yeah, so guess what happens? Then eventually, right, the adult now who is supposed to be responsible for their life, they're supposed to be confident, and they're supposed to go out into the world and make things happen. But imagine that adult actually deep down feels not good enough. They keep still comparing themselves to other people, how they measure up, how they don't measure up, how this is, and this becomes a really bad, vicious, just one of those games that, just a bad idea. Now, why am I telling you this? Because, so as a hypnotherapist, okay, so many people out there, by the way, hypnotherapist, I'm typically the last resort. I actually should be the first resort, but whatever. I become the last resort because by the time people come to me, they have already been to therapy. They have received a diagnosis and a label. They have endured decades of therapy. Oh, and then that didn't work, and so then they were medicated. How convenient. Let's try that. But nobody ever helped them to understand what is causing this low self-worth, low self-esteem issue, and how, more importantly, how can we restore it? How can we help you become the person that you truly are, the real you, deprogram all those programs, the ones that are trying to whisper to you secretly that you're not good enough. That's what I do here. I deprogram, help people deprogram those voices that cause them to stay stuck and small and inferior. We got to get rid of that crap and then put something in place that will actually serve you, where you can walk into that important room, whether that's the boardroom or the courtroom or the classroom or the bedroom, when you can actually walk into that room like you own the room, like you're supposed to be there, like you have business to do, like God sent you on this big, incredible, important mission, and you actually feel worthy and you feel like you're important and you feel like, no problem, I am gonna handle this like a king or a queen. That's the goal. And by the way, every single human being is capable of that. Not only are they capable, that's who you really are. Okay? Everything else is just noise and distraction and programming. And that has to go, if you ask me. And typically, and what's even more important, typically that program is found in your subconscious. Your traditional therapy, CBT, all those tradition will not touch the subconscious. They work at the conscious level. They try to use logic, do these affirmations, set these goals, tell me more about your problem, let's talk more about your past. Are you kidding me? And then nothing ever changes. Well, how could it change? When your behavior is being controlled by your subconscious. 95% of our behavior is controlled by the subconscious. And depending on what you have in your subconscious will determine the quality of your life, will determine your self-worth, will determine how you feel about yourself, what kind of a problem solver you are, what kind of relationships you will have. This will determine your finances, your health, and all these other things. So, in closing, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not small. You might be stuck temporarily, but now can you see why this might cause people to stay stuck? Because walking around your whole life, constantly wondering and worrying, am I good enough, is a bad idea. Because the answer will always be, I don't know. What are we measuring? Toward what? Like, what's the criteria? Like, what are the standards? It's just such a bad idea. Instead, discover who you really are, what your gifts, talents, traits, abilities, skills, what can you appreciate and adore about yourself, and then start there. Understand which are the programs that are preventing you from being that person. You know where to find me. I hope this was helpful. I hope that this made sense to you, because so many people, by the time they come to me, they feel defeated. They feel depleted. They're like, I don't even know what to do with myself anymore. Yeah, no kidding. You have simply received tools, a bunch of tools. It's incomplete. You know, it's a good start. It's a good start to work with the logic, with the conscious mind. Yes, good start, but very incomplete. You see the difference? We've got to get the subconscious involved. And then you're going to start to experience groundbreaking, world life-changing transformations inside of you. And then, of course, life is going to answer that back to you. I'll see you next time.